Imagine being summoned to another world as a hero and mocked when given a skill no one has ever heard of. So you choose to live out your days in peace, but your online grocery skill is more capable than it seems, naturally drawing unwanted attention from the strongest beings that roam and govern this new world. Our story opens with our MC Mukuda Tsushi along with three other students being summoned before a princess, only to have their skills appraised by hooded figures. Kaido Saito is appraised to be a holy sword wielder, whilst Kanon Uno and Ryo Yoshida possess sacred magic along with multiple elemental affinities. The princess begs the heroes to save their kingdom of Raijseeger, but as the hooded figure scans Muta's stats, he's revealed to be a 27-year-old salaryman with the skill Online Grocery. Immediately, Mukuda hears that his unique skill has never been heard of before, ostracized as it seems the three other heroes are far more overpowered than himself. With everyone brought before the kingdom's king, they all learn about the Demon King invading the Raijseeger kingdom, prompting the king himself to ask for the heroes' help, and in exchange they'll be sent home once their duty is done. Heroically, Kaito, Uno, and Yoshida all agree to help the king, but Mukuda realizes something is sketchy about this whole situation, choosing to speak up as he asks to be pardoned. That way he can live a peaceful life away from this drama. Surprisingly, Mukuda is allowed to leave, handed 20 gold coins, but Mukuda is unsure about the worth of said coins. Passing through town, Mukuda garners strange looks from the town's folks, choosing to purchase a change of clothes only to pay others for information he is searching for. Mukuda chooses to stop by a grocery store to pick up some food, only to pick out a place to stay, slumping into his bed as he is grateful he chose a more peaceful life. Mukuda points out how the royals were carrying such luxurious items, showing signs of greed, but before Mukuda makes plans to leave the country, he calls for his status window to appear. Mukuda reads that he is level 1 and has the skill appraise and item box. A good turnout, as he doesn't need to carry around things. As for his online grocery skill, he's still unsure how it works. Fidgeting around for a bit, Mukuda ends up tapping on the skill, only to be frightened when an ordinary-looking grocery website pops out in front of him. Sifting through the items, Mukuda starts by adding water bottles to his cart, only to move on to some bread he can eat right away. When he goes to check out, he is asked to pay for his meal, choosing to pay with a silver coin, only to receive what he ordered magically via a cardboard box. Mukuda is impressed by such a skill, swiftly munching on his bread, as he reasons such a skill was unknown to the royals and could be used to sustain him and make a profit in this new world. Making his way out of town, Mukuda is advised to head to the town of Keels near the border of the kingdom, barely managing to hitch a ride with other travelers. During his journey, he makes some small talk with a traveling merchant, learning that the merchant plans to sell some soap in Keels, an item that is considered quite luxurious. Mukuda wonders why the merchant doesn't just store his luggage in his item box. But the merchant says the item box skill is quite rare, with only 1 in 1,000 having such a skill, whereas the appraisal skill itself is the rarest of them all, with only heroes being able to wield such skills. Mukuda hears that appraisal items are precious and are strictly held by the guilds and countries. But when the merchant wonders why Mukuda is asking him such things, Mukuda manages to conceal his rare skills, reasoning that his secrets should be safe as long as no one appraises him. When a merchant hears that Mukuda is planning on staying in Keels permanently, the merchant says it's a good idea, seeing as trouble is brewing in Raijseeger and rumors say the kingdom's borders will be closed soon. Right on cue, Mukuda arrives at a stop only to learn that all travel services have been suspended. Visiting a tavern, Mukuda chats with some knights, surprised that the knights plan on shifting their jobs to monster hunting, seeing as a war starting would be less favorable for them. Visiting the town's guild, Mukuda greets the receptionist only to request for escorts to help guard him to the kingdom of Venan by foot. Seeing as such a request is quite taxing, the receptionist asks that Mukuda pay 8 gold coins for his job, but seeing as he has no other choice, Mukuda reluctantly pays up. Immediately, the receptionist calls out to Werner and his party, prompting Werner from the Iron Will to introduce himself as a C-rank adventurer. Seeing as he wants to head out as soon as possible, Mukuda says he'll cook for the gang to save on expenses, something Werner is grateful for, as he says he'll get his party ready to set off tomorrow morning. Cutting to the next day, Werner introduces Vincent the swordsman, Rita the scout, Roman their mage, and finally Franca the healer. Starting on their journey, the gang remembered to take breaks in between, allowing Mukuda to show off his item box skill, where he retrieves a cooking stove and pot. Mukuda remembers that a magic stove would cost him 50 gold, so instead he used his online store to purchase a gas stove, allowing him to whip up some soup and sandwiches for the gang. With every mouthful, the gang are impressed by Mukuda's cooking, but Mukuda is revealed to have used his online grocery skill to pick out some soup packets along with pre-made sandwiches. Seeing as his escort party is slowly warming up to him, they all agree to continue their journey, but with Rita as their front guard, she suddenly orders the gang to halt. Out from the nearby trees, two massive bugs fly towards them, prompting Werner and Vincent to dash towards the monsters, instantly slaying them. As Franca heals the party, Rita is seen reporting sightings of a red boar up ahead, but with Ramon's help, they escort the boar directly towards them. Stepping up to the plate once more, Vincent and Werner tag team the massive beast before them, but even as C ranks, they easily slay the creature. Harvesting the creature's flesh, the gang reasoned they can sell the hide and fangs of the boar for a good price. As for the flesh, Mukuda offers to store them in his item box. With the sun setting, the gang gather around Mukuda's cooking, all choosing to turn their backs to allow Mukuda to cook comfortably. Mukuda decides to combine the harvested bacon with some vegetables, topping the meal off with some sausages only to serve the meal with some bread. Seeing everyone scoffing down his warm stew, Mukuda is relieved they enjoy his cooking. But when Mukuda serves up a second round, he wonders why the others are so impressed by his simple cooking. Mukuda chooses to appraise the other stats, speechless upon discovering Rita has outrageous stats for someone of her stature. Suspecting something, Mukuda appraises the stew he made, realizing the food items he brought using the online grocery store are giving his party MP and strength boost, a horrifying discovery, as such a skill can become dangerous in the wrong hands. Choosing to keep his discovery a secret, we pan out to see a mysterious creature stalking our party from the bushes. Continuing their journey the next day, they make substantial progress towards the Venan Kingdom, all reasoning that it'll be 2 to 3 days left until they'll part ways. But seeing as night has fallen, they all prioritize setting up camp. Heading off on his own, Mukuda takes out some of the harvest boar meat, first slicing them into pieces only to marinate them in some ginger sauce he purchased online. Next, Mukuda finally chops up some cabbage, only to retrieve his gas stove, beginning to fry the marinated pork, but the sheer smell of the pork draws in the attention of the onlookers. Serving up the ginger marinated pork alongside the cabbage, the gang are instantly blown away by the succulent flavors that fills their mouths with each bite. But as Mukuda goes into the logistics of his cooking, Werner begins to quiver, pointing out the monstrous creature that has snuck up on them. The creature demands to be fed, forcing Mukuda to feed it some of the marinated pork, but seeing as the monster's hunger is yet to be satiated, Mukuda rushes off to cook some more. Batch after batch, Mukuda hastily feeds the creature, finally able to satisfy its hunger only after he's exhausted his supplies. Having taken a liking to Mukuda, the monster agrees to form a contract with Mukuda, making it his familiar, and seeing as he doesn't have a choice, Mukuda reluctantly agrees, turning white when he hears the monster demand to be fed 3 times a day. The monster says they must be given a name, refusing to accept an ordinary name, but seeing as the monster is a Finrer, Mukuda settles for Fel. Proceeding the next day, the gang gets some horrified looks, especially since Fel is nonchalantly trotting alongside them. Plus, in the past, a Finrer destroyed the entire country. Werner says Fel is guaranteed to draw attention from Venan's higher-ups, but Mukuda panics, seeing as he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. As the gang set up for lunch, Mukuda realizes they're running low on the boar meat they harvested, demanding that Fel go hunt for more meat, seeing as Fel requested that every meal contain meat. Fel admits that's a reasonable request, immediately dashing off to hunt down some prey. But in the meantime, Mukuda is praised for managing to command around the powerful Fenrir. At that moment, Fel returns with the corpse of a rock bird, a B-rank monster that Werner admits even their party couldn't take out. With the gang helping to extract the bird's flesh, Mukuda retrieves some teriyaki sauce, choosing to fry up the bird meat alongside the sauce only to serve it alongside some onion soup. Mukuda chooses to serve his party first, choosing to spend the rest of the time cooking and feeding Fel, ultimately using up the entirety of the rockbird. Having finally made it to the border of Kingdom Venin, Mukuda notices the kingdom's knights rallying outside the border, realizing that it's due to Fel's presence. Werner offers to speak with the knights, heading first towards the border, only for the rest of the gang to follow suit, ultimately greeted by Edgar, the captain of the knights. Edgar demands to know what Fel's intentions of entering the kingdom are, but Fel simply utters that it is Mukuda's familiar and it has no reason to harm the kingdom of Venin. Seeing as Fel is quite tamed, Edgar permits the gang to cross their border, but gets intrigued seeing the legendary Fenrir listen to Mukuda so willingly. Entering the checking station, Mukuda realizes he doesn't have a guild card, so he is forced to pay to enter, but regardless, Mukuda is just relieved to have made it to his destination. Werner warns Mukuda that the king will surely want to meet with Fel and Mukuda, but Mukuda reveals he won't be staying for long, as he plans to travel the world. Werner suggests that Mukuda apply at the Adventurers or Merchant Guild to ensure he can cross into any country without needing to pay a tax like earlier. Mukuda reasons that the Merchant Guild is best for him since he can sell the items he cooks for a profit, but the gang remind Mukuda that the Adventurers Guild can help carve up the monsters Fel catches, and Mukuda can still make a profit from the monster droppings. Seeing Mukuda conflicted, the gang reveal that Mukuda can apply to be both a merchant and adventurer, all heading towards the town's guild, but during the process Mukuda pays another tax to enter into the town. Out of nowhere, Mukuda is greeted by Edmund, a servant of Margrave Lindell, swiftly inviting Mukuda and Fel to meet his master. Mukuda hesitates to accept, but Edmund is very persistent, forcing Fel to step in, declaring that it knows Edmund and his master are after its powers. Fel successfully scares away Edmund, leading Werner to explain that nobles are only after status and power, plus the Margraves won't have enough manpower to force Fel into submission. Fel mentions how the ancient dragon it fought 400 years ago was the only creature worthy of its time, but seeing as their escort job is finished, Werner asks for Mukuda's signature to confirm they finished their task. Mukuda realizes he can read and write, a feature of being a hero, but just like that, Mukuda part ways with the others who are heading to the Adventurers Guild. Mukuda and Fel choose to visit the Merchants Guild, entering the building only to draw the attention of everyone in the room. But regardless, Mukuda greets the receptionist Michaela, asking to register as a merchant. Michaela gets to work explaining that the Merchants Guild isn't owned by any country and is composed of 5 ranks, with one's yearly fee, business type, and overall operation size determining said rank. Mukuda says he plans on traveling and opening food stalls where he pleases, something that classifies Mukuda into the lowest rank of iron. With Mukuda finally registered and given his merchant's card, he confirms that the guild buys monster drops. But first, Mukuda checks into his inn, showing off the stable Fel will have to stay in for the night. With it getting late, Mukuda gets started on dinner, piling up some meat for Fel only to wonder how he can satisfy his craving for rice. Mukuda chooses to invest in another stove to cook the rice, all whilst grilling the steaks in a separate pan, intentionally keeping them quite rare, just how Fel likes its meat. Topping the steak with some soy sauce, Fel instantly gobbles up the meat, demanding more, but Mukuda chooses to switch out the sauces to see which combination Fel prefers. After feeding Fel, Mukuda gets excited seeing as his rice is finally ready, carefully scooping out a bowl of rice only to top it with some steak and sauce, immediately devouring the meal. With Fel helping to clean up any leftover food, Mukuda is seen leaping into bed, but remembers to prepare the items he plans to sell the next day. Heading to the Merchants Guild the next day, Mukuda shows off the items he plans to sell, but Michaela gets shocked upon inspecting the items, quickly asking Mukuda to follow her to a separate room. Introduced to the Guildmaster, the Guildmaster reveals that the salt and pepper Mukuda plans on selling is so valuable it could be a gift for royals. The Guildmaster asks to personally purchase the item, offering up 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 gold coins for the pepper, piquing Mukuda's interest as he purchased the salt and pepper for a measly 5 copper coins, each from his online store. Mukuda remembers that pepper used to be as valuable as gold in the past, but seeing Mukuda deep in thought, the Guildmaster mistakes it for hesitation, choosing to offer up 17 gold for both the salt and pepper. With Mukuda accepting the purchase, he reasons he shouldn't exploit such a trade too often, heading outside only to direct his attention to the Adventurers Guild. Makuta is greeted by Bianca, the guild's receptionist, who hands Makuta a form to fill out for his guild membership, paying no attention to Makuta, only to toss him his guild card once the paperwork is done. Seeing Bianca brush him off, Makuta asks for an explanation on how the rank and quest systems work, prompting Bianca to reluctantly utter that adventures all start at J rank and the highest attainable rank is S rank. Adventurers can accept a quest 1 rank higher or equal to one's current rank, and that there is a validity period for an adventurer's rank. Plus, G ranks must accept a quest each month. Viewing the quest board, Makuta reasons he should get started on a herb gathering quest. But first, Makuta whips up some more steak for Fel. Makuta gets curious as to how strong Fel truly is, using his appraisal skill on the beast, only to be speechless seeing Fel's maxed out stats. Waking up bright and early the next day, Makuta heads to wash his face, only to hear Fel growling at him, demanding to be fed a filling breakfast. Putting together a quick breakfast, Makuta and Fel head out for their herb gathering quest, reasoning that Makuta himself should gather some herb whilst Fel hunts for their next meal. Fel suddenly detects monsters roaming nearby, swiftly casting a protective barrier to ensure its master's safety, only to part ways as Fel rushes to hunt down some monsters. Taking out the quest, Makuta sees that he needs to gather Caillou and Maj grass, using his appraisal on the nearby field only to see that there is only weeds growing nearby. Heading a little deeper, Makuta successfully hunts down both Caillou and Maj grass, reasoning he should take back some extra just to be safe. Seeing as his quest is already finished, Makuta gets started on lunch, using his online store to purchase some beef, pork, meat sauce, and pasta. Makuta first dices and sauté the onions, only to add the meats and sauce, but suddenly Fel returns with another rock bird. Fel mentions that it hunted other prey and left it nearby, but for now Makuta focuses on boiling and salting the pasta, serving the pasta and the sauce only to top off the dish with some Parmesan cheese and parsley. Inspecting the dish, Fel is skeptical at the vine-looking dish, but with a single slurp, Fel begins to devour the spaghetti dish before him. Makuta is glad he can still enjoy the foods he loved in his original world, suddenly bursting out laughing when he sees Fel is all dirty from shoving its face in the meat dish. Finally heading to inspect Fel's other prey, Makuta scans the monster corpses, realizing that Fel has brought back a giant deer, black serpent, and murderous grizzly only to store them away in his item box. Makuta does notice that Fel has brought back some orcs, skeptical if they're edible, but Fel reassures Makuta that humans eat orcs all the time. Seeing as everything is done, Fel offers to give Makuta a ride back into town, instantly dashing through the forest and towards town, but Fel's sheer speed almost knocks out Makuta. Back inside the guild, Bianca is impressed that a G rank managed to gather so many herbs, handing Makuta the pay for the quest along with the excess herbs he picked. Before Bianca leaves, Makuta mentions how he would like to sell some monsters his familiar had hunted down, but Bianca is clearly too distracted adoring how fluffy Fel looks. Bianca points Makuta to the guild's butcher, but upon learning that Makuta has quite a heap of monster corpses he needs to sell, the butcher asks Makuta to follow him out back. The butcher is glad to have finally met Makuta, mentioning how there were rumors of him around town, but when Makuta shows off the A rank and B rank monsters Fel slaughtered, the butcher becomes speechless. Makuta says he needs to harvest the meat from all of the corpses, something the butcher says he'll have ready by tomorrow. But seeing as Fel is getting hungry, the butcher agrees to harvest an orc first. With a slab of pork in front of him, Makuta says he'll use the parsley and Parmesan cheese from earlier, first slicing up the pork only to pound it thinner, covering it with an egg flour mixture, and finally frying in the pan. Makuta chooses to add parsley and cheese to the dish, serving up 2 styles of pork piccata along with any leftover sauces. As our duo devour the meal, we see Makuta returning to the butcher the next day, amazed the man was able to separate everything in a single day. The butcher also hands Makuta his pay for the monster droppings, frightening Makuta when he learns his payment is 202 gold coins. The butcher says the orc testicles, boar skin, and monster fangs are ultimately what yielded such a high payout, plus A rank and stronger monsters drop magic stones. Makuta is grateful to the butcher for teaching him such things, hearing that the butcher used to be an adventurer and that Makuta could probably get away with calling Fel a great wolf instead of a Fenrir to attract less attention. With nothing left to do in town, Mukuda and Fel continue their exploration of this new world, choosing to travel all day only to stop and set up camp once the sun begins to set. Seeing as Fel had earned him a lot today, Mukuda asks what Fel wants for dinner. But as Mukuda scrolls through his online store for takeout food options, Fel can't help but drool profusely. Settling on an assortment of meats, Fel takes his time gobbling each individual lump of meat, but off to the side Mukuda starts to cook up some Japanese black wagyu. Serving up a single wagyu steak to Fel. Fel is quite disappointed at his portion size, but upon tasting the steak, Fel can't help but admire the sheer tenderness the way the wagyu feels in its mouth. Mukuda hears that since monsters roam the world, there is no need to raise or domesticate animals. But as the duo wrap up their well-earned meal for the night, Fel is seen all fired up, noting how Mukuda's meal is giving it extra strength that could even rival the ancient dragon and its sworn rival. Curious, Mukuda appraises Fel's stats, shocked to see his food has buffed all of Fel's stats by 50%. Too restless, Fel swiftly casts another barrier to protect Mukuda whilst it's gone, speeding off into the night only to leave Mukuda to set up his sleeping bed for the night. Happily tucking himself in as Fel's barrier is putting him at ease. With Mukuda fast asleep, we see Fel encountering a rock bird only to take it down with a single swipe. Up next, a giant deer catches Fel's attention, but a single lightning spell dispatches the deer. Noticing a swarm of orcs nearby, Fel leaps into the epicenter of the gathering, immediately wiping out the horde with a torrential wind spell, only to notice an orc general appear. Sadly, the orc general's movements are far too slow, allowing Fel to slay it with a single swipe, but suddenly a chimera appears. Having just gotten started, Fel's roar sounds throughout the night, and by daytime Mukuda is in disbelief seeing all the monsters Fel had slain whilst he was sleeping. Hearing that Fel was able to take down a chimera with a single attack, Mukuda declares that the black wagyu will be removed from their meals moving forwards, especially since it gave Fel too great of a buff. In the coming days, we see Mukuda cook up a cockatrice with some soy sauce and lemon glaze, sitting down to enjoy a sandwich only to ask how Fel hunts. Fel says he uses mainly his teeth and claws, and only uses magic to eliminate weaker creatures, mostly wind magic, seeing as Fel had been blessed by the goddess Ninrir. Mukuda wonders if he can use magic too, opening up his system terminal only to confirm that he has a magic stat, but wonders how he can cast his first spell. Fel says you only need to think of casting a spell to use magic, but Mukuda says a genius like Fel won't be able to teach him, choosing instead to picture a fireball, but when Mukuda tries casting a spell, nothing happens. Seeing Mukuda embarrassed, Fel says Mukuda must allow magic to flow through his body first, asking Mukuda to touch its fur to feel the sensation of magic flowing through him, only to ask Mukuda to replicate the feeling himself. Setting up a can, Mukuda conjures a mini fireball, but his cast strength is far too pathetic to strike the target. Fel suggests that they engage in actual monster combat to help Mukuda grow, but upon seeing Mukuda wimping out, Fel drags Mukuda deeper into the forest. Discovering some goblins, Fel asks Mukuda to attack them, but Mukuda fears that the goblin swarm will be too much for him. Annoyed, Fel howls, drawing the goblins' attention towards Mukuda, who hurriedly flees. Running alongside Mukuda, Fel instructs Mukuda to continuously cast spells to survive, only to leave for now, as Fel wants to hunt monsters as well. Seeing no other way out, Mukuda manages to fire off 2 fireballs, but accidentally trips over a rock when he gets too distracted. With the horde now pouncing on Mukuda, Mukuda is suddenly protected by the barrier Fel had casted earlier, and seeing as he still needs to fight off the goblins, Mukuda lets rip several more fireballs. With only a few remaining, Mukuda musters his remaining strength to cast a final greater fireball, but having no strength left, Mukuda collapses to the ground. As the remaining goblins approach Mukuda, Fel arrives intercepting the goblins, but as Mukuda finally falls unconscious, he awakens later that night angry at Fel for putting him through that experience. Fel says Mukuda should be thankful since Mukuda can now use magic. Plus, Fel says he can detect Mukuda's level has risen, something Mukuda confirms as he is now level 3 with the fire magic unlocked. As a gift, Fel shows off a goblin king he has hunted And even though goblin flesh is not edible, Fel says Mukuda can still cash in a magic stone the goblin has. Fel says he wants to be rewarded with a meal, hinting at the fact that a Wagyu steak may suffice. But Mukuda says he won't be serving Wagyu anytime soon, especially since Fel was too energetic afterwards. When Mukuda prepares to start cooking, he suddenly collapses onto his knees once more, declaring that they'll have to buy stuff online for their dinner, seeing as he's too tired. Served up a massive plate of dessert buns. Fel watches as Mukuda nibbles on a melon bun, following his lead as he too devours his platter of desserts. As Mukuda serves up seconds, he warns Fel not to eat too many sweets or he'll become sick, but Fel says his blessing from the goddess Ninrir makes him immune to any poisons of debuffs. Mukuda can't help but get jealous, screaming out into the night sky to be blessed as well, all whilst a mysterious being listens to Mukuda's pleas. Reaching their next town, Mukuda is cornered by some knights who are threatened by Fel, but luckily Mukuda's guild card calms down the knights, seeing as Fel is registered as Mukuda's familiar. Fel gets annoyed when others call him a great wolf, using telepathy to communicate with Mukuda, seeing as they are master and slave technically. One of the knights reminds Mukuda that he is responsible for any damages Fel may inflict, but as the duo head through town, they reason they should find a map to see where they're heading next. Checking into the Elmira's Inn, Mukuda asks Fel to wait for him only to leave Fel with some snacks so he doesn't run off. Visiting the town's bookstore, Mukuda stumbles onto a book that teaches basic magic, only to be shocked to hear the book will cost 7 gold coins, especially since paper is quite rare in this world. As for a world map, Mukuda hears that such an item is considered a nationally restricted item, ultimately forced to leave empty-handed. Having failed to learn anything from the town's library as well, Mukuda returns to a starving Fel, annoyed to hear that Fel wants to be fed. Seeing as they need food quickly, Mukuda chooses to purchase some yakitori and tonkatsu from his online store, pleasing Fel as they resemble the boar and rock bird they ate previously. Needing to eat himself, Mukuda ends up steaming some rice, only to enjoy it with some leftover pork cutlets and dipping sauce, all whilst Fel drools over the meal. Exploring town the next day, Mukuda stumbles into a bar only to approach some men to ask them a few questions. When the men refuse, Mukuda buys them a few drinks, cheering up the mood as they gladly invite Mukuda to sit down. Mukuda starts by uttering that he traveled from the kingdom of Ragester and it's his first time in the kingdom of Venin. But immediately, the men mention how the kingdom of Ragester has started several wars in an attempt to claim more land once the new king took over. Mukuda hears that the kingdom of Ermin and the kingdom of Leonhard in the east are safe places, plus there are dungeons for adventurers to explore. Mukuda is grateful for the information, but voices how upsetting it is he has yet to find a map. Coincidentally, the men before him reveal a map of their own, having obtained it from a fellow adventurer. The men offer to pass it down to Mukuda, seeing as they've already memorized it, even agreeing to sell it to Mukuda for a measly gold coin. Unable to pass up the opportunity, Mukuda agrees to buy the map. But as the men leave, the remaining people in the bar laugh at Mukuda, revealing that the map he bought could have easily been purchased at the guild for a single silver coin. Taking the hit and learning from the loss, Mukuda and Fel continue on feet eastwards to the country next to the sea, a location that should house sea serpents and krakens. In the realm of gods, we see Ninrir wondering why Fel had contracted with a human, continuing to monitor Fel and Mukuda. Back with our duo, we see Fel speeding past a forest, only to arrive near the sea. Fel says he's fiending for some seafood, nonchalantly approaching the body of water only to unleash a devastating lightning spell that slays countless fish. Fel says Mukuda is free to collect as many fish as he needs, and the remainder should return back to normal after their paralysis wears off. Getting to work, Mukuda starts off by collecting some violet trouts, only to encounter a bigger-looking king trout. But when Fel asks Mukuda to retrieve a purple-looking fish, Mukuda appraises it to be a poisonous lake fish. Mukuda instantly tosses the poisonous fish back into the water, reminding Fel that his human body won't be able to withstand poison, instead settling for the other fishes. Mukuda and Fel proceed to gather firewood only to start a fire with Mukuda's fire magic, followed by Mukuda buying flour, butter, and mushrooms. Next, Mukuda washes and guts the fishes, seasoning them with salt only to skewer and roast them over a fire. Moving on to the king trout, Mukuta begins filleting the fish, switching things up by wrapping up the king trout in some foil alongside some seasoning, placing this batch alongside the fire to cook. Finally, Mukuta moves on to the remainder of the fish, battering them only to grill them like normal. With 3 different fish dishes completed, the boys tuck into their dinner, prompting Mukuta to take out a can of beer to pair it with the fishy meal. With every bite of fish and sip of beer, Mukuta gets lost in the endless flavors in his mouth, but suddenly Fel cries for more fish, forcing Mukuta back onto his feet as he continues to fry up some more fish. Having stuffed themselves, Mukuta mentions how their dinner reminded him of camping, but as he heads to clean up, he suddenly bumps into a slime. Fel reasons that they shouldn't worry about an insignificant creature like a slime ruining their night. And when Mukuta pokes at the slime, he can't help but adore it. Checking its stats, Mukuta confirms that the slime was born 3 days ago and has very low stats. But when Mukuta sees that the slime is hungry, he feels bad since there is no food left. Surprisingly, the slime hops over to the rubbish that is piled up, slowly dissolving the rubbish Mukuta was supposed to clean up, but Mukuta steps in when it begins to dissolve his cooking utensils. In mere moments, the slime had helped Mukuta clean up any trash left over, earning some praise from Mukuta as he gives the slime a tight hug. Fel reveals that the affection Mukuta just showed the slime created a contract with it, and now the slime is Mukuta's familiar, something Mukuta confirms when he checks his status window. With a new companion added, Mukuta gives the slime the name of Sway, cutting to a few days later where Mukuta is training his earth magic, having discovered recently he had an affinity for it. Seeing Mukuta's slow progression, Fel offers to find more monsters to challenge Mukuta's growth, but Mukuta blatantly refuses, instead sitting down for a break alongside Sway. Mukuta notes how big Sway has grown, having progressed from level 1 to 8 in 3 days. Strange since Sway has only been eating the trash that's been piling up. Seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Mukuta quickly whips together some miso stir-fried, orc meat atop some rice and lettuce, something Fel instantly gobbles up. Mukuta had made extra, so Sway could eat with them, all 3 sitting down to appreciate the salty and tender dish. As Fel and Sway dust off their plates, they both ask for seconds, only to cut to later that night where our trio are stuffed. Checking Sway's stats, Mukuta confirms that his cooked meals give temporary buffs, adoring Sway as it helps clean off the dirty dishes and bowls left over from his cooking, reminding Mukuta that they should celebrate Sway's first meal. Mukuta chooses to prepare some red bean buns and hot tea for everyone, a food that makes Fel crave desserts more and is an item that makes Sway hop around gleefully. The next day, Fel is seen staring off into the distance, only to wake Mukuta up as they need to discuss something serious. Fel reveals that Ninrir had sent him a divine message last night, uttering that Ninrir is willing to bless Mukuta if he offers up a payment of sweets every week. Although Mukuta is confused, Fel continues by stating that the blessing Mukuta will receive is a minor blessing that can still grant immunity to most illnesses, but instant death and powerful curses are still a threat. Luckily, such a blessing will boost Mukuta's magic capabilities, but Fel emphasizes that Mukuta needs to offer up sweets once every week, annoying Mukuta as it's obvious that Ninrir clearly just likes sweets. As Mukuta accepts such a deal, he wonders how he can send his offering to Ninrir, hearing that any item can be made into an altar as long as Mukuta means what he is praying for. The final thing Fel mentions is that the first offering must contain certain dessert breads, but seeing as there is no reason to refuse, Mukuta prepares the breads alongside some coffee. With his hands clasped, Mukuta offers up the food items to Ninrir, watching the food items vanish, and in exchange Mukuta receives a minor blessing from the goddess. Following Ninri, she is seen quivering, having finally received the dessert breads she had been watching our trio eat. With a single bite, Ninrir is overjoyed by the delectable treat, even flushing down the scrumptious treats with the coffee Mukuta sent only to continue to stuff her face with the other sweets. Getting back to training, Mukuta tries out one of his rock spells, amazed to see that Ninrir's blessing has improved his strength and control over his magic. Additionally, Sway has reached level 13, motivating Mukuta to work harder and get stronger. But But after a few hours of training, Makuta decides to refuel with some sweets. Combining some chocolate with some coffee, Makuta shares his meal with Sway, both awaiting Fel's return. After some more waiting, Fel finally returns, instantly sniffing out the chocolate Makuta had snacked on whilst he was gone, forcing Makuta to purchase some more chocolate to quench Fel's cravings. To make things worse, Ninrir telepathically orders for Makuta to send her some chocolate as well, shyly uttering that she had already finished the sweets he sent her, so she needs some more. Reluctantly, Makuta agrees, only for Fel to rush Makuta onto his back, horrified to hear that Makuta's training isn't going well, only to whisper under his breath that they'll need to visit a certain location after all. Arriving before a cave, Fel utters that it is actually a dungeon before them, and Makuta will need battle experience to train his new earth magic. Seeing Makuta try to sneak away, Fel swiftly tosses Makuta back towards the dungeon, reassuring Makuta that the dungeon is only filled with weaklings. But Makuta says they're weak only to Fel. Fel reminds Makuta that one day he won't be able to fully protect Makuta, finally giving Makuta the courage to tackle the dungeon. But first, Makuta declares he'll need to eat first. Ordering tons of takeout, Makuta finally tells Fel about the stats boost his food grants, and since Makuta can't tell what foods boost which stats, he simply begins to gorge on spread in front of him. Only tasting each food item, Makuta hands the leftovers to Sway, who helps clean up any mess, whilst also leveling up from consuming non-food items. As Makuta finishes up tasting the desserts, he comments on how full he is, and upon checking his stats, he confirms that everything is boosted by 20%. With Fel and Sway eating the leftovers, Makuta sees that their stats went up as well, and with Fel casting his barrier on Makuta, they finally enter the dungeon with Makuta wielding a sword. As Makuta slowly treks into the cave, he suddenly encounters a slime, wondering if he should slay it since Sway is present, but in an instant Sway spits out some acid, instantly slaying the opposing slime. Fel is impressed that Sway had learnt such a skill, all watching as Makuta follows up with a stone bullet to attack an incoming slime, only for Sway to finish off a second approaching slime. Makuta is freaked out hearing that the dungeon will absorb anything that dies in it, including the slime corpses before them. But as they venture deeper, Fel warns Makuta that horned rabbits are on the next floor. With the rabbits rushing Makuta, he aimlessly swings his sword around, only to move on the next floor where Makuta faces some goblins with his fire magic. Makuta does wonder why monsters are still attacking with Fel present, hearing that monsters in the dungeon attack anything that enters, suddenly running into kobolds on the next floor. At first, Makuta attempts to flee, but seeing no other escape, Makuta manages to unleash 2 earth projectiles that flatten the kobolds, amazing Makuta himself. Fel reminds Makuta to grow stronger whilst in the dungeon, all heading into the deepest floor of the dungeon. But horrifically, Makuta encounters hundreds of kobold guarding the last floor. When Makuta tries running away again, Fel stops him, allowing Sway to help this time with clearing the floor. Plus, Fel himself can always step in if things get hectic. Seeing Sway pumped up, Fel shoves the pair towards the enemy, alerting the kobolds to Makuta's presence as they all simultaneously lunge at Makuta. Luckily, Fel's barrier repels the attacking monsters, giving Sway the opening to slay several kobolds with its acid spit. Makuta rushes to join in, casting several stone bullets in tandem with Sway's acid spit to clear out the majority of the attackers. After a while, only 2 kobolds remain, both seemingly fleeing the scene, but out of nowhere their corpses are flung out of hiding, revealing the boss of the dungeon, the Kobold King. Fel says the king has appeared since his subordinates have been slain, but out of nowhere the king locks onto Makuta, forcing him to flee. With Makuta attempting to take down the creature with his stone bullets, he realizes that the projectiles simply deflect off the king's tough exterior, panicking as he can only flee from the king's axe swings. To make things worse, Fel mentions how his barrier won't completely protect Makuta, forcing Makuta to steal his resolve as he conjures a far greater stone bullet than the rest, managing to strike the king directly in the head. With the Kobold King's head recoiling, it suddenly recovers, opting to use its claws to attack Makuta, but before Makuta can retaliate, he suddenly feels dizzy, having exhausted his mana. Left wide open, Makuta is once again saved by Fel's barrier, realizing that Fel was lying to force Makuta to grow. With the Kobold King fixated on breaching Fel's barrier, Sway fires off a beam of acid, instantly disintegrating the creature. But before Mukuda faints from fatigue, he notices Sway glowing. Back outside, Mukuda awakens from his slumber, reassuring Sway that he's fine, but strangely enough, Sway can now communicate with him. Mukuda pulls Sway in for a hug, checking her stats only to see that she's evolved from a baby slime to a slime, explaining why Sway was glowing earlier. To top things off, Sway is already level 7 after a level's reset. As for Mukuda, he is officially level 7 with Earth Magic as a new skill, but sadly he is still weaker than Sway. Mukuda hears that Fel left a while ago, but in the meantime, Mukuda wonders if Sway is a rare breed for her kind. But right on cue, Fel returns. Mukuda realizes Fel went out to hunt and eat since he got hungry. Still annoyed, Fel lied to him about his barrier breaking. But Mukuda is grateful since Fel pushed him out of his comfort zone. Seeing as everyone is hungry, Mukuda browses the online store to pick up some eggs, fish stock, soy sauce, and rice, only to begin cutting up some onions and rockbird. Next, Mukuda simmers the ingredients in a broth base, only to top everything off with some eggs, adding the mixture to some rice to reveal a rice bowl. As our trio devour the well-earned meal, they choose to rest up afterwards. But Mukuda suddenly bursts out laughing hearing Sway call Fel her uncle. Since Sway is only 14 days old and Fel is 1,000 years old, it makes sense. But feeling embarrassed, Fel roars, demanding to be addressed simply as Fel. Scared, Sway begins to shiver and cry, leaping into Mukuda's arms as he teases Fel for being mean. Giving in, Fel permits only Sway to address him as uncle, exciting Sway as it seems they've all grown closer. Entering into a domain filled with orthros and griffins, Fel declares they'll be charging right through instead of going around to save on time. But Mukuda says those monsters are considered boss-level threats. Fel reminds Mukuda that he can't be defeated, first running through the orthros territory, but within mere seconds our gang are swarmed by a pack of orthros. Although most of the orthros can recognize that Fel is stronger than them, a lone younger orthros chooses to challenge Fel, prompting Mukuda and Sway to run for cover. As the young orthros rushes Fel simply waves his paw, shooting a burst of wind magic that shreds the attacker. Fel gives the other orthros a chance to flee, all whilst Fel explains that technique he just used, but Mukuda is too busy admiring how cute Sway is for wanting to learn Fel's technique. At night, the gang set up camp, but when Mukuda heads to retrieve some water, he flinches at everything, fearing something may attack him. Fel says their earlier confrontation should have warned any attackers to stay away, and seeing as everyone is getting hungry, Mukuda heads to prepare the stoves. Mukuda asks Fel how much longer it'll take to arrive at their destination, shocked that they're only halfway and it'll probably take another 3 weeks to reach their end goal. Mukuda fears they'll run out of meat soon, choosing to retrieve some black serpent meat alongside a variety of other ingredients. Mukuda starts by trimming the flesh off the bone, only to dice up the serpent meat as if it were chicken. Mukuda then starts tossing the serpent meat with some seasoning and chili sauces, ultimately serving up some chili black serpent, relieved to see the serpent taste fine. With both Sway and Fel impatient, Mukuda rushes to feed his starving familiars, suddenly realizing that there are only scraps left over, as Mukuda settle for a sandwich filled with the leftover chili serpent. The next day, the gang enter into Griffin territory, but make a pit stop when Fel detects some rare healing mushrooms nearby. When eaten, the mushrooms can heal wounds or broken bones, and seeing as there is quite a lot of mushrooms present, Mukuda starts collecting them while Sway devours some. After a while, Sway is seen glowing again, but although Sway seems fine, Mukuda checks her stats to make sure. Surprisingly, Sway has learnt the skill of healing potion creation. A feature Fel suspects is due to Sway eating healing mushrooms, as slimes tend to evolve based on what it eats. Mukuda praises Sway for learning such a useful skill, asking Sway to try it out only to watch Sway oozing out a strange liquid. As Mukuda catches the liquid in a bottle, he inspects the substance only to see it is a high-quality liquid that can heal things from impending death. With Sway showing off other types of healing potions it can create, Fel admits that he has never seen such an intelligent and skilled slime like Sway before, something Mukuda celebrates as he hit the jackpot with Sway. In the next 3 days, The gang finally encounter their first griffin. But as the creature flies towards the gang, it suddenly greets Fel with its head hung low. The griffin begs Fel to duel it, as it wants to become head of its pack. And seeing as the griffin is willing to give its life to prove itself, Fel accepts the duel. Off to the side, Mukuda asks that Fel not slay the griffin. But as the duel starts, the griffin leads with several slashes that Fel evades. Fel chooses to kick the griffin away, but the griffin simply sends out several feather projectiles, forcing Fel to dodge, all whilst creating a smoke screen in favor of the griffin. The griffin uses the smoke screen to dive in and out for attacks on Fel. But getting a little annoyed, Fel unleashes a tornado that clears the smoke, all whilst capturing the griffin in the eye of the storm. Mukuda screams for Fel to let the griffin live, forcing Fel to release the griffin from the tornado. But the griffin is too beaten up to move. Quickly, Mukuda and Sway heal the griffin with Sway's healing liquid. But seeing the griffin depressed, Mukuda points out that the griffin was able to land a hit onto Fel. Surprised it was able to harm the legendary Fenrir, the griffin roars, attracting its kind only to declare that it has become leader of its pack thanks to Fel. Before the griffin leads with its pack, it hands Mukuda one of its feathers, promising to not intervene with the gang moving forward. That night, Mukuda thanks Fel for clearing things up with the griffin, reasoning that he should use the rest of their meat to reward Fel. Mukuda opts to batter and season the remainder of their orc meat, deep frying it only to serve it beside some cabbage and sauce, a meal both Fel and Sway gladly devour. With Mukuda whipping up second for the gang, he is reminded by Fel to send offerings to Ninrir, cutting to a few days later where the gang have finally emerged from the forest. Mukuda celebrates a month and a half worth of traveling, checking the map to see that they're close to the kingdom of Leonhard, and seeing as they're basically out of meat, the gang sprint to search for any man-made roads. Off in the distance, Mukuda spots a caravan being attacked by bandits, ordering Fel to save them in exchange for a luxury meal later. Enticed by the offer, Fel rushes towards the caravan, all whilst we see Lars desperately fending off the bandits, all whilst Lambert is ordered to remain hiding in the caravan. Right on cue, Fel leaps into the air, drawing everyone's attention as he orders the bandits to freeze and relinquish their weapons. Overwhelmed by Fel's presence, the bandits give in, allowing the bandits to be tied up safely. Lambert introduces himself as the owner of the caravan, and Lars is the leader of the Phoenix Adventure Party that had been employed to escort Lambert, all grateful to Mukuda for saving them. Lambert mentions how they're heading to the city of Carolina, the northwestern city in the kingdom of Leonhard, and seeing as it's convenient for them as well, Mukuda agrees to accompany everyone to the kingdom of Leonhard.